And then there was a big growl from all the bears, and Goldilocks woke up with a start. And the bears chased her all around the house until everyone was very, very exhausted. And Goldilocks explained that she was lost and hungry, and that she was very, very sorry. The bears were still very upset, especially Baby Bear. Finally, they all came up with an answer. Goldilocks helped Papa Bear fix the chair. She helped Mama Bear cook more porridge, and she showed Baby Bear how to make his bed. And then Goldilocks washed up all the dishes, and the bears told her how to get home from the forest, and they all lived happily ever after. Well, that's not the story, is it?
No.
They've changed the ending, haven't they? That's silly. Why have they changed the ending?
I don't believe it. Some bright spark has decided to change the end of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And for what? Political correctness. I don't recall ever finding the fact that Goldilocks was scared out of a house by three huge angry bears offensive or disturbing in any way. In fact, she deserved it. I said it. All this political correctness has just gone too far. I mean, fairy tales used to have a message. Now it's been lost in the name of equality and fairness. I don't even know what the moral they're supposed to portray is anymore. You know what? I think enough is enough. People don't seem to listen, so I'm going to play them at their own game. My mission is simple. I'm going to create the most politically correct fairy tale ever. We'll show them. But first, every great book needs plenty of research. I mean, Three Little Pigs wasn't written in a day. The author had to research twigs and hay and bricks, not to mention social interactions between pigs and wolves. I can tell if I'm going to really write a successful children's story, I'm going to really have to put the work in. So I'm going to travel to Bromley to talk to members of the public about what offends them, or their children, and maybe try and find out if people actually know what political correctness is. What does political correctness mean?
To me, or in general?
To you or in general?
I think it's what people...
I don't know.
Well... No. So amazingly, a lot of people don't know what political correctness really is. But a brief look around the internet has led me to one person whose life is heavily influenced by political correctness, and that's because she's a nursery school teacher. And political correctness has had a greater effect on the way she conducts herself in the nursery and with the kids. Now I'm going to go meet with Tanya Naldini, and we're going to discuss political correctness, and hopefully she'll be able to give me some advice for my fairy tale. Firstly, I'd just like to know a bit about your job.
We look after children under 5 during term time, and then during the holidays we have children that were originally here in the nursery come back during like Easter breaks, summer breaks, and they come back and they can stay here up until the age of 8.
The main topic for me today is political correctness, because I'm trying to find out as much as I can about it. Could you tell me about how political correctness affects sort of your work here?
You know, children have different backgrounds, different religions, and you have to be aware of those and get each of those children to put their input into those activities. It's important that they know about each other's religions and cultures, but then I think ultimately, you know, we are a Christian country, but we just have to be aware and respectful to other people. So therefore, you've just got to be very careful how you address the different races and what might be offensive to them. But sometimes it goes a bit too far. I mean, obviously, if you chose to do a nursery rhyme that was clearly offensive and a child went home and sang that nursery rhyme, you would be sure to receive a complaint. You know, there are certain nursery rhymes that you really cannot be using this day and age because they would be offensive, and I think that's right to get rid of those. But then there are others, you know, Three Blind Mice, Bar Bar Black Sheep. I think that they can stay in their form. I don't see how they're offensive, and I don't actually know anybody that has been offended. The only concerns I've had is from a parent who's been told by another parent, I don't think they're allowed to sing that anymore. but it is black and white, and why would it be wrong for something that is black to be called black? And Baba Black Sheep is always a favourite.
Okay, I brought along this book of fairy tales, which I've annotated, and I was wondering if we could go through these, a couple of these together, and find the sort of the grey areas and the danger zones that people might find politically incorrect. A lot of them, in my opinion, are quite harmless. But, for example, the hare and the tortoise. But I mean, do you think is there room for that to be changed? I mean,
but yeah, if you were to look at the moral of the story and then analyse it, yeah, of course, it's obvious that the runner is going to get there quicker than the walker.
I've actually read a nursery rhyme that it's Goldilocks. We all know Goldilocks, but in this fairy tale, they changed it so that instead of Goldilocks being chased away, she helped fix a chair, I think, and she made more porridge, and she taught Baby Bear how to make his bed.
It's like doing the crime, was it community service? We still tell Goldilocks as it was, and in fact we do elaborate on it, yeah. But certainly she doesn't do any community service.
So it's clear that even Tanya thinks that this political correctness has become ridiculous, but she's given me some great advice for my book. I can now see exactly how many obstacles I have to face. But before I do that, I feel it's probably best to speak to one of the most politically incorrect people I can think of, just so I can see exactly how sensitive people might be if I get it wrong. The Amateur Transplants are a London-based parody music duo whose lyrics leave audiences both shocked and amused.
Political correctness is only really something to someone who's got a problem with it. I mean, people who complain about political correctness are generally racists, trying to defend what they do, or they're unreasonably uptight. I think if you're just a normal, rational member of society, you don't really engage with political correctness as a concept.
Your material can be described by some as quite politically incorrect. Is this something you strive to do, or is it just sort of come out this way because that's your sort of humour?
In a way, I mean, it's all about context. If I go on stage and say northern birds are easy, in the context of a comedy show, hopefully people will laugh at the jokes. Whereas if I stand up on a crowded aircraft and shout it, then people think of me slightly differently. I don't want to shy away from topics, but on the other hand, I don't want anyone to actually leave feeling less happy than when they arrived.
Do you feel that people are becoming increasingly offended on other people's behalf?
The complaints we have got are from sort of middle-aged, middle-class people saying, how dare you say a comment about quadriplegics, whereas I will in the same week get an email from the Wheelchair Basketball Association saying, we love that track, how do you think of these things? So it's people like to be outraged on behalf of other people they feel should be outraged. I think that there's a lot of that. You can be much more offensive by taking someone else's point of view on their behalf.
I'd quite like to talk about some of the fairy tales I have in this book. The gingerbread man, I mean, you know, it's a man, so are we allowed to say man, or what about a woman? Is a gingerbread woman, gingerbread person, perhaps? What do you think about that?
We're worried about the word ginger, aren't we? My wife is red-headed and does take genuine offence. I think because, you know, growing up with red hair, that's the number one insult growing up. And now she's big enough to handle herself, but really doesn't like that word and will pick people up on it.
Yeah. And how about Humpty Dumpty?
If you think about what actually happened, they didn't take appropriate action. All the king's horses, all the king's men. They should have phoned for actual medical assistance. Because if you are to survive a terrible fall, and if you're an egg, a fall is one of the worst things that can happen. That's essentially game over. But you want urgent medical assistance.
So I set myself a task to write a really politically correct fairy tale. What advice would you give me?
You need to pick your background. You need to be a very diverse. Don't give children a book that's got a word that you wouldn't want them to say or know about. On the other hand, if you're changing nursery rhymes because it's got the word black in it and you think that's a problem for someone, ask the person who's going to be offended. Don't assume people will be offended. You need to represent all populations. I presume there is in Eskimo.
After speaking with Adam about all things politically incorrect, I think I need to see someone
who can clear my mind of all these impure thoughts and prepare me for the final stage of my journey, writing the book. Now, Ian Cownley is a diversity officer at a college in Chislehurst, which means he works with school and college kids from a variety of age groups. And because of this, his job is really governed by political correctness. Now, I've come to ask his thoughts on how I can perfect my fairy tale.
I've been looking through this book of fairy tales and looking at stories to see where potentially people could be offended. But have you got any advice for me?
See, a lot of them are parables. They're about ways that maybe the Victorians, or even before that, wanted us to behave.
Yeah.
So it was about princesses and about how women should interpret and how they should actually be.
Humpty Dumpty is an absurd example. I mean, do you really think someone could be offended by this?
As a child, I presume Humpty Dumpty was a representation of somebody of a larger girth. Trying to be politically correct there. If I say that, you say, no, it's not. It's just a bloke just happens to be that shape. He's an egg shape. Why are you associating that with somebody who is rotund or large? Yeah. And I'm really being careful not to say the F word. Yeah. But maybe it isn't. I always thought Humpty Dumpty was an egg.
It seems like you really struggled to maintain political correctness there and actually avoid saying the word fat.
You know, our personalities, are they through nurture or are they through nature? So is political correctness educated into somebody? In my case, I think it was. I think I was educated to be politically correct because of the political background I came from my family and the youth groups.
So my mission is to make the most politically correct fairy tale possible, and I'm doing this because of an edited version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, where instead of Goldilocks being chased away by three angry bears, she stays behind and helps Papa Bear make a chair, Mama Bear make porridge, and the baby bear, she teaches him how to make his bed.
Already, to me, what you've just described, the father making things, the woman preparing food, and the little child making the bed, to me is politically incorrect. Because the woman, why is she doing the food? Yeah. Why can't the father make the food? That's more reflective of a modern culture. I think you have to factor in that you could offend. Yeah. And if you accept that you could offend, then actually that is okay. If you actually say, I don't want to offend, full stop, you probably will never put pen to paper.
Yeah, very much for speaking with me today. It's been really, really very interesting, eye-opening, and it's given me a lot of good advice for my fairy tale. So, thank you very much. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
I think I've seen enough evidence of this political correct madness. I think it's about time I sit down and started writing this story.
You need to be a very diverse.
You address the different races and what might be offensive to them.
Why are you associating that with somebody who is rotund or large?
So I'm going to read you a story called The Adventures of Sam and Ali, and it's the world's most politically correct fairy tale of all time. Once upon a time there was a turtle called Ali. The turtle had this name because it was a multicultural name, and as the turtle was an animal, he was unhampered by rigid traditionalist notions of what a masculine or feminine. Many people would consider this an odd pairing of both an Anouk and a turtle, but it is important to remember that we live in a multicultural society where it is essential for all creatures to befriend other races and or species, to continue their day and live happily ever after in a politically correct existence. The end. What do you think of that?
That was rubbish!
That was rubbish. Never a truer word spoken by a child. It just goes to show that political correctness has been taken too far. The Adventures of Sam and Ali. Well, that doesn't offend me, but